Explore truth. JustProfessor here. If it is easy to think of examples, you assume it happens all the time. You try to remember instances of something, accidents, failures, success stories, bad outcomes. And if examples come to mind quickly, you assume it is common, you assume it happens a lot. You assume it is a real pattern. But if you struggle to think of examples, you assume it is rare. That it barely happens. That it is not something to worry about, and you base decisions on this. Big decisions. Important choices. Life-changing moves. All determined by how easily examples pop into your head, not by how often they actually happen. Not by what the data says. Not by what is real. Just by what your memory can quickly grab. And your memory is a terrible judge of frequency. Because it does not store things based on how common they are. It stores things based on how dramatic they are, how recent they are, how emotional they are. So you end up thinking rare things are common and common things are rare. All because your brain confuses ease of recall with actual likelihood. This is called ease of retrieval bias. And it is making you bad at judging risk, probability, and reality. Here is how it works. Your brain uses memory as a shortcut for decision-making. When you ask yourself how likely something is, your brain does not calculate statistics. It does not analyze data. It just tries to remember examples. And if examples come easily, it assumes the thing is common. If examples do not come easily, it assumes the thing is rare. This feels logical. This feels like your brain is using evidence, but it is not. Because memory is not a reliable record of frequency, memory is biased. It remembers vivid things, emotional things, recent things, unusual things. And it forgets boring things, routine things, normal things. So the ease with which you remember something has almost nothing to do with how often it actually happens. This is why ease of retrieval bias is so dangerous. It makes you overestimate dramatic risks and underestimate boring ones. It makes you think plane crashes are more common than car accidents because you remember plane crashes more easily. It makes you think success stories are everywhere because the few you remember are memorable. It makes you think rare events are typical and typical events are rare. All because your brain is using the wrong tool to measure reality. Most people trust their gut when making decisions. And their gut is just their brain checking how easily examples come to mind. If something feels common, they avoid it. If something feels rare, they ignore it. But those feelings are not accurate. They are just reflections of what your memory happens to store well. And what your memory stores well has nothing to do with what actually matters. Think about what happens when you assess risk. You think about flying, and you can easily remember news stories about plane crashes. They are dramatic. They are scary. They stick in your mind, so flying feels dangerous, but then you think about driving, and you cannot easily remember specific car accidents. They are too common, too routine, too boring to stick in memory. So driving feels safe, but the data says the opposite. Driving is far more dangerous than flying. But your brain does not care about data. It cares about how easily examples come to mind. And plane crashes are easier to remember. So you fear the wrong thing. Or think about success. You want to start a business. And you try to think of examples, and you remember the big success stories. The companies that made it. The entrepreneurs who got rich. Because those stories are everywhere. They are inspiring. They are memorable. So starting a business feels like a good bet. But you do not easily remember the failures, the businesses that closed, the entrepreneurs who lost everything, because those stories are not told as much. They are not as exciting. They are not as memorable. So you underestimate the risk. You think success is more common than it is. All because your brain retrieves successes easily and failures with difficulty. This is what ease of retrieval bias does. It makes your perception of reality depend on what your memory happens to serve up easily. And what your memory serves up easily is not what is common. It is what is memorable. And memorable is not the same as frequent. Now think about how this affects your judgments about people. You meet someone from a certain group, a profession, a background, a demographic, and you try to assess them. And your brain pulls up examples of people like them. And if you can easily remember negative examples, you assume this person is probably negative too. But if you cannot easily remember negative examples, you assume they are fine, but your sample size is tiny. Your memory is biased. And you are making a judgment about an individual based on how easily you can recall unrelated examples. That is not fair. That is not accurate. That is just your brain using a shortcut that does not work. Think about how this creates stereotypes. You hear about a few bad cases from a group. And because those cases were dramatic, you remember them easily. And because you remember them easily, you assume they are representative. You assume most people in that group are like that, but they are not. You just remember the dramatic cases more than the boring normal ones. And your brain mistakes that ease of retrieval for actual frequency. So you form beliefs about entire groups based on a few memorable examples, and those beliefs are wrong. This is the trap. Ease of retrieval bias makes you think your memory is giving you an accurate sample of reality, but it is not. It is giving you a biased sample. A sample that overweights the dramatic, the recent, the emotional, and the unusual, and underweights the boring, the old, the calm, and the typical. And when you use that biased sample to make decisions, you get biased results. You avoid the wrong risks. You chase the wrong opportunities. You judge people unfairly. All because you trusted what your memory could easily retrieve. And here is the worst part. You do not know you are doing this. You think you are being logical. You think you are using evidence. You think you are making informed choices. But you are not. You are just reacting to whatever your memory happens to serve up first. And your memory is serving up the wrong things. The memorable things, not the common things. And you cannot tell the difference. Because ease of recall feels like frequency, but it is not. This means ease of retrieval bias is not about lacking information. It is about trusting the wrong signal. You have access to information. You have access to data. You have access to statistics, but you do not use them. You use your memory, and your memory is unreliable. It prioritizes the wrong things. It gives you the easy examples, not the accurate ones. And you base your decisions on those easy examples. And you end up wrong, not because you are dumb, but because you are using a tool that was not designed to measure frequency. You are using memory. And memory was designed to remember important things, not common things. And important and common are not the same. So here's what you need to understand. If something comes to mind easily, that does not mean it happens often. It just means it was memorable. And if something does not come to mind easily, that does not mean it is rare. It just means it was not memorable. Ease of retrieval is not evidence of frequency. It is evidence of memorability. And memorability is shaped by drama, emotion, recency, and novelty. Not by how often something actually occurs. Stop trusting your gut when your gut is just your memory being lazy. Stop assuming that because you can think of examples, those examples represent reality. Stop making decisions based on what is easy to remember instead of what is actually true. Because easy to remember and actually true are not the same thing. And confusing them will lead you to fear the wrong things, chase the wrong goals, and judge people unfairly. Ease of retrieval bias makes you think your memory is a good measure of the world. But it is not. It is just a measure of what's stuck. And what's stuck is not what matters most. It is just what your brain happened to hold on to. So stop letting ease of recall drive your decisions. Start checking your assumptions. Start looking at data. Start asking if your memory is giving you an accurate picture or just a dramatic one. Because most of the time, it is the dramatic one. And the dramatic one is not the real one. Subscribe if you want to see more ways your brain tricks you into being wrong.